Hello everybody, as you can see in the title down below today, what we are going to be talking about is the Code Vein beta, and I'm just going to be giving my thoughts and overall first impressions of the game based off of what I played in the beta. This is not an in-depth review, this is literally me recording after me playing the game for 7 hours. Should have been 6, but I forgot to record the footage of me beating the Blade Bear, so I had to spend another hour beating her for a second time. So jumping into this, starting off with the art style, I know a lot of people are going to compare this game to God Eater 3. It has the same color palette and it's basically using the same graphics engine, which is nothing surprising in my personal opinion. They're both Bandai Namco games. They started development, I believe, around the same time if I'm correct, so it's not surprising to me that they would use this engine for another game. Obviously, it's just a very cost-effective thing to do. But these games do somewhat vary in art style, and I feel like Code Vein, from what I have seen in this game, has a more cohesive art style as compared to God Eater 3, where God Eater 3 is about making your character and some of the other characters in the game much more unique. And I'm not saying characters in this game don't have their distinct looks. I feel like there's an overall more general tone aside from your own custom character, in my personal opinion. And hopefully we can get more enemies designed like the Queen Knight, who I believe is the best designed enemy in the game as of me playing this beta. Just looks wise, I hope there are more enemies that look like him because I really am enjoying how that boss looks. Moving on from that point though, and talking about the graphical style and the cohesiveness of it, what I want to get into is the actual frame rate. This game is aiming for 60 FPS and this game looks absolutely great when it is reaching that. But take into account that I am playing on a base PS4, there's a fair bit of the time when it is not reaching that, whether you break a whole bunch of boxes and it drops to 20 frames, or occasionally when more than like 4 enemies are on the screen at once, it tends to dip a little bit into the 50s and sometimes even 40s. It didn't happen too much to deter my overall experience, but it is something to be noted. And personally, since I have the option of playing this on PC, since I have one, I am going to recommend get the PC version because I do believe that this game is going to look amazing with all the motion blur and all of that great stuff that we saw in the trailers for the game. And to be honest, I'm always a person who likes playing the game as best as it could possibly look, unless it is one of those games where the art style supremely overshadowed how good the graphics could ever be. So just to put that into perspective, I really want to recommend to you guys get it on PC if you have the option available to you, but just know that it's not that bad of a time on a base PS4, just to give you some idea of what I was playing on. Okay, now that we have talked about the visuals and the looks of the game, let's get into the actual gameplay. So basically what you have in this game are blood codes. Blood codes are different items that you can equip that will allow you to change your stats up and have more of a focused path in the game. Some focus on defense, some focus on offense, some give you abilities focusing on dodging and parrying and blocking, and so on and so forth. I'm imagining in the game there are going to be more specific ones attuned to certain type of play styles. But what is very unique about blood codes, because they're basically a way to unlock abilities on a certain path, what you can do is with blood codes, once you unlock an ability and you defeat a certain amount of enemies or gain a certain amount of experience while having that ability equipped, what you can do per se is take a defensive blood code, level up 2 or 3 abilities that you especially want, unequip that defensive blood code, equip an offensive based one, and then bring those defensive abilities to your new offensive loadout. So you can make basically a glass cannon who is really good at regeneration, which is their version of healing, or you can make a very tanky character who's great at parrying and blocking but may not put out the most damage. It's really a mixed bag. You can basically create your character and make it however you want to. Among the 5 ways you can deal damage, which are light swords, giant hammers or swords, staves, rifles, personally I stuck with the light sword. I felt like it gave you the best amount of mobility while being able to do damage with buffs. On top of that, I do feel like there was a place for every single weapon in this game depending on how you want to play and just how the weapon feels to you. And talking about how the weapons feel, what I will say is I agree with some people that the animations don't have a sense of impact sometimes. I don't really know how to explain it. I don't know if it's because of the long startup on some animations or just because of how fast the light sword was to me, or some of the other weapons are, there isn't a sense of impact when you're hitting an enemy, but it isn't that big of a deal. It didn't deter from my experience at all, but it is something that was kind of noticeable to me. It felt kind of floaty, kind of like you were hitting them with a piece of paper. Other than when you staggered them, it was obviously noticeable that you were doing some damage, and they were showing signs of that. So maybe they can fix the animations to make them have more impact, but that's really the only criticism I can say of the actual combat, because this is truly a Souls-like game where I feel like it's an RPG first and a Souls-like game second, which is quite the opposite to a lot of other games in the genre, which are like Bloodborne and Nioh, for example, which is also developed by Namco Bandai and has some very similar elements. And next, moving on from the gameplay and talking about how great that is the music. The music is great, absolutely. From all the tracks that I heard in here, they're amazing. I can't wait to hear more of the soundtrack. Namco Bandai is doing a great job over there. The only thing that I have to say is that there is no real ambience music. The only time music really plays is in cutscenes or when you're in battle. So when you're walking around and you're not fighting any enemies in between, is just the ambient noise. So I'm not really a big fan of that when it comes to games. If you have great music, play more of it. There may be some type of idle theme later on in the game or in the full game, but as of right now, I have to judge it off of what I've played, and I really would hope that they try to play more music even when you're not in battle, because that would be greatly appreciated. And seeing as I have gone over visuals, gameplay, and the music, I think the last major thing that I can touch on before I wrap up this video are the enemies, and specifically the bosses. The bosses, in my opinion, were a bit of a mixed bag, because there were 4 different sets of bosses. There were the 2 twin sets of bosses, and then there were the 2 single bosses. When it came to Stone Crusher and the Raging Noblewoman, I didn't see any distinct patterns that led to an opening that we can usually find in games more refined like Dark Souls and Bloodborne. And I will give them some leniency towards this, because this stuff could be patched and balanced out by the time the full game comes out, and this is the first time I think this team specifically is working on a Souls-like game. But it has to be noted that I kind of felt I had to just jump in there and hit them as hard as I could when I saw what was an inkling of an opening, when there wasn't really any distinct pattern that I could follow between the 2 enemies. It felt like they were on 2 separate planes doing whatever the hell that they wanted to, instead of them kind of working together, and then eventually you seen a pattern where you could go in and attack them. 9 times out of 10, once you went in on these 2 bosses, you got hit. As opposed to the Agent Wolf soldiers, it felt like quite the opposite in my personal opinion. Albeit I did defeat one of the wolf soldiers very, very fast, as you can see in the video right now, with a back attack, which in my opinion wasn't explained too well, so somehow I randomly got that and took out pretty much all of his health. But it felt like these 2 were on a separate AI plane as well, instead of, in this case, neither one of them was capitalizing on the other's attacks. So I really hope by the time that this game comes out that they improve upon these dual bosses. If this is going to be a thing with more than a few bosses, I really hope that they really work on this, because this is one big thing that kind of threw me off while playing the game. But talking about the 2 singular bosses, Queen's Knight and the Blade Bear, they were amazing. They were great. They were distinct opening to go in, get a quick hit, and come back in, but they were also difficult and would punish you when you got extremely greedy, as they should. These were 2 fairly well-designed bosses. I can't wait to see more. If this is what they're doing in the beta, I can't wait to see what they have in store for us in the full game. So pretty much, to go over my general thoughts one more time, the music is great. The gameplay is very amazing. If you like RPGs that allow you to basically build your character as you want to within the confines of the game, please pick up this game, because this is definitely a game I can see where you like making multiple runs through a game, but every time you go through the game you like doing something different. This is definitely a game that will allow you to do that. Obviously, I've talked about the enemy designs being outright amazing in the case of like the Queen's Knight, and I hope they do more designs like that in the full game, and I hope they work on the AI when it comes to dual bosses, because that is something I feel like can be improved upon. But overall, in my 7 hours of playing the Code Vein beta, I enjoyed my time with it. I can't wait to pick up this game. Will I pick it up for $60? That remains to be seen. I have to give some more thought default to that because I'm very picky about which games I buy at $60 nowadays. I usually wait until they go on sale for the most part. But with that being said, let me know your opinions on Code Vein. Did you get into the beta? And if you did, let me know your opinions on it down below. And is there anything in here that I didn't address that you would like to know in the comments down below? But with that being said, it has been your boy Skipx. I will see you all in the next one, and I am out.